was convinced by board members to keep him on until investigations were complete, in a position of no real power.
I will be the new chief operating officer. The senior vice presidents will report to me. I'm going to be running the business on a day-to-day basis.
His bet on Monis gone bad, Shapiro needed to find out how much money was missing. Who did he turn to? The auditors, Coopers and Lybrand.
When we first heard that these checks had been found, we pulled together the audit team who simply went out to start digging into areas that had not been dug into prior to this discovery.
Coopers began interviewing employees who could tell them what they'd missed. John Anderson was anxious to talk.
They needed my help. I knew that I wanted divorced from the Pat Finn situation, and I must admit I was overwhelmed. But at the same time, I was not hesitant or reluctant at all to kind of show them everything that I knew what was going on.
Anderson told them the WBL payments were just the beginning of a huge fraud. With Anderson leading them by the hand, Coopers now discovered the full extent of what it had missed during 4 years of audits. And Farmore's board now discovered the awful truth. Charles Cohen, a Farmore director, says the board was shocked.
It was at that point that we realized that we were talking about a massive accounting fraud in which the accounting department, apparently under the direction of Mickey Monis, had cooked the books in a world-class way.
The board had to do something. It fired the auditors, blaming them for not finding the fraud. The game was over. In fact, the company that even Walmart feared hadn't earned a dime in 5 years. A tip about a check for travel arrangements had led to the discovery of one of the biggest corporate frauds in U.S. history. Pat Finn had decided to come clean and confess everything. But there was one great danger, that he would be blamed for the whole thing if Monis were to claim ignorance of the fraud. So on Tuesday, July 28th, Finn called Monis at home.
Hello?
Mac.
Yeah.
What's going on?
How you doing?
Not good.
Finn wanted tape proof of Monis's involvement to take with him when he went to the authorities.
I mean, when we go in and we talk about this, I mean, are you going to protect me and my guys and say that, you basically were authorizing this?
Hey, I'm going to protect you. What am I going to tell them? I mean, what am I going to tell them? That I didn't know anything about it? Is that what you mean?
No, I mean, you almost have to say that you authorized it. I mean, that you knew about it.
I'm going to say I know we had a bucket to cover the gross profit, and we weren't covering it. It got away from us. That's what I'm going to say, okay?
Yeah, man, I just feel we're just cooked.
The next day, Finn turned himself and the tape over to the authorities. For Mickey Monis, it also appeared to be over. Farmore fired him, and he was indicted on 129 criminal counts. The government accused him of directing the fraud. Their chief witness would be his protege, Pat Finn.
I'm really not going to comment on the case.
We're not going to talk about the case. I appreciate that you have a job to do, but we're not going to talk about it. Okay?
If convicted, Monis would face life in prison and fines of more than $36 million. Overnight, Farmore's image of success was snuffed out.
I'd like to kill him. I really would.
Thousands of employees were laid off when the company filed for bankruptcy, revealing that it needed $500 million to erase the losses. In desperation, Farmore closed half the stores Monis had opened. And the shockwave spread quickly across the nation's business community as suppliers, banks, and investors learned that they'd been backing a loser all these years. Anthony Cafaro's company lost more than $9 million.
Everybody gets hurt. I mean, all the employees, obviously the investors, the stock is worth virtually nothing. Many of the vendors actually lost money or will lose. They're not going to be paid dollar for dollar when the bankruptcy comes out. The banks, the lenders have lost. Who's made money on it? Nobody has, ultimately. The only people that come out are the attorneys at the end.
A slew of legal suits followed as investors and lenders hurried to stake their claims. Farmore's last official act before it filed for bankruptcy was to sue Coopers & Lybrand, claiming their audits fell far short of accounting standards, were in fact incompetent.
I have been around audits for almost 30 years, and I'm a professor of securities regulation, so I have read many cases involving auditors. A normal, careful audit by attentive managers and staff, in my opinion, should have and would have exposed some of the failures that occurred here.
But Coopers & Lybrand has its excuse. It was royally snookered just like everyone else.
When you have the most senior management of the company, particularly its financial management, consciously setting out to fool the auditors, to hide information from them as they've testified in the Monas trial, it's very hard to get around that kind of activity by the senior management.
But according to the SEC, auditors have a responsibility to do more.
The auditors, at the end of the day, have no room to compromise. They have a responsibility to dig deeper, to be skeptical, to ask questions, and to impose a discipline on management and on the financial reporting process that may otherwise not be there.
If found negligent, Coopers will be liable for hundreds of millions of dollars. But they're fighting back.
We're suing David Shapira as the CEO, and our assertion is that he either knew or was recklessly indifferent in not knowing of what was going on around him. We believe that they are principally responsible for the fraud.
But now answer me this. How can there be a crime involving $500 million where everyone is a victim? The accountants, the board of directors, the chief executive all failed to prevent it from happening, all claim it was the other guy's fault. They blame each other, and above all, Mickey Monas, the self-deluded gambler. But how far are self-delusion and gambling from the positive traits of optimism and daring which we expect from our entrepreneurs? Not that far, perhaps. Which is why we also expect those in oversight positions to keep an eye on those taking the risks. When they don't, we wind up in court. Because without controls, a system based on gambling and self-delusion will tend to run amok. Surprising to many, Mickey Monas' first trial ended in a hung jury.
Oh, no. We had our minds made up. He was as guilty as I'm standing here.
Really?
There's more than enough facts to convict, I feel. But some people just refuse to see the facts.
Who was undecided?
One person hung the whole jury, every single count. I believe the person was paid off. Myself.
The FBI is taking these allegations seriously and is investigating for possible jury tampering. While Monas continues to maintain he did nothing wrong, Farmore is attempting to dig itself out of bankruptcy. By cutting expenses and closing their money-losing stores, they might yet stage a comeback. David Shapira never responded to repeated requests for an interview. He still sits on Farmore's board, across the table from corporate partners, which is suing him to recover their $200 million investment. John Anderson, in return for his cooperation, was never prosecuted. Despite his role in hiding the fraud for 4 years, he still sees himself as a victim.
You see him? I used to have this belief that all people were good and that all people had good intentions. And where I'm at right now is I really have a hard time trusting people. and that's something I have to learn to do again, because I want to do that again. But having been through this particular experience, it really has made me look at people and situations in business in an unfavorable manner. And I have to learn to trust people again.
Stan Charlstein was fired by Farmore, but never charged with anything. He's named in several civil suits brought by investors, and now works in Florida as an accountant.
I really think that the situation at Farmore occurs at small companies and middle-sized companies all the time. And my recommendation to any accountants or chief financial officers would be, don't let it happen. Don't let it start. Because once you start, it's very easy to let it happen a second time. And who knows where it will end.
It ended in jail for Pat Finn. Last February, having admitted his responsibility for crafting the fraud, he reported to a federal prison to begin serving a 33-month sentence.
It's okay to be loyal. It's okay to as I did, try to build a company, to nurture something from the beginning. But never lose sight of yourself, never compromise yourself for that. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. No matter how much of a team ball player you think you are, you're just destroying yourself and destroying things that are important to you.
You can understand certain things. You can understand aggressive accounting. You can understand people who are executives, who are hard-charging, who are optimistic. That's how they get to be leaders. Those very things that made someone a superb executive, a superb accountant, a superb chief financial officer, sometimes also make them a superb criminal.
Mickey Monis is still gambling, still denying everything, and now awaits the start of his second trial. The jury will have to decide whether Mickey Monis is a crook or just a hard-driving entrepreneur.
What a sad day it is for Youngstown. What a black day it is for Youngstown.
Like you say, you brought a lot of value and positive things to the valley.
I felt bad because it's another black mark against our town, and it seems that we seem to be so gullible that we want to...
I compare Mickey Monis kind of like to Richard Nixon. He just got caught.